guys, and welcome back to my vlog. As you can tell, there is no tea today because we will actually be spilling the tea. Okay, so real talk, guys. This vlog is part of my kind of mental health exercises. Lately, I have been dealing with quite a bit of medical aversion. My therapist says it's because of medical trauma, which makes perfect sense. But one of her recommendations for working through it and having a healthy outcome. I have goosebumps whenever I talk about something I have an aversion to. I get goosebumps, and we're trying not to hyperventilate here. So let's try this again. One of her recommendations for dealing with the trauma and working through the trauma is to tell my story. And I have a vlog, so let's see if this helps, and hopefully helps somebody else. That crying baby you hear was born 2 weeks early. The way she was born gives me a little bit of anxiety when I think about it, when I talk about it. My first daughter was born late, so she kind of hung around. I didn't go into labor with her because they had to induce labor, so I didn't really know what labor felt like exactly, but ignoring the fact that I was exhausted, I was abnormally tired through this whole pregnancy. I had hypermesis, I was sleeping a lot, I wasn't eating well, of course, which you don't when you have hypermesis, but that last month I was pretty much in a coma. I woke up and I was in a decent amount of pain. I was like, well, I'm used to pain, so it wasn't alarming to me. So I called my doctor and I was like, hey, this has been going on for about, a bit. She was like, go to the hospital, just go to the hospital. My doctor is amazing. She's like, what? Something's wrong? Go to the hospital. I'm like, I hate the hospital. But she's like, go to the hospital. And thank goodness that this time I listened to her. I went to the hospital. I was 4 centimeters dilated. And they asked me how often I was having this pain. How often do I think I'm having contractions? And I said, once every 10 minutes. And so they hooked me up to a monitor and they were like, you mean once every 3 minutes? Girl. So it's fine. So I stayed in triage for a little bit. They were waiting for me to dilate further. We just hung out. The contractions they weren't great, but honestly, I felt like a warrior. I was like, you know what? If this is as bad as it's gonna get, I'm not even gonna get an epidural. I'm just gonna do this like they did 500 years ago. Like, people have been giving birth since the beginning of time. I want to be part of that. I don't know what was going through my head. I must have been delirious because I was like, I'm gonna do this without an epidural. And the pain wasn't so bad that I thought that, no, this is impossible. So, I moved through, they shuffle me through the funnel of, hey, is this person, having a baby right now? I wasn't dilated hugely, so I mostly just sat around for a bit until my doctor decided, I was high risk enough, even though it was only 4 centimeters, she was gonna have me admitted. Got to the room. Matthew was with me, by the way. I got to the room because, it's COVID, I can only have one. So I got to the room and got strapped up. Everything was fine. The contractions were, coming steadily, but I wasn't getting any more dilated, so they were like, well, just wait. I was very not excited about the prospect of having sorry. I was not excited about the possibility of having to induce this labor because I was already in labor. I figured this couldn't be like the last time. So I opted to just kind of hang out and wait, and I did, and they were fine with that. When I got to, I think 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, they asked me if I wanted the epidural. And at that time I was very torn because of course there are I'm trying to keep my anxiety down so I don't just like hyperventilate through this whole video. There are risks that come with epidurals, and again, I was in warrior status. I was like, I got this. And I talked to Matt, and he was like, look, I don't want it to get to the point where you need the epidural and you can't get it anymore. So I very nervously accepted the offer of the epidural. I was just very tired. It's very important to remember that I was exhausted before this started. So I get the epidural, and it is, I don't want to bash the hospital that I went to. Hospitals are one of those things like furniture companies. When you look up the reviews, everybody's always angry. But not me. I was thrilled with Chazzy's birth, and with the exception of this, I was thrilled with Amara's birth. But when I went to get the epidural, the tech who was going to give my epidural was this ancient man who came in. When he walked in, I was like, this guy does not give a fuck about me. It's fine. My nurse was very, very, very sweet, very helpful and thoughtful. So I was like, it's fine. We'll do it. When I got the epidural with Chazzy, it hurt for the second that it's supposed to hurt, but then it was done. When I got this epidural with Amara, it was horrible. It was horrible. Just the numbing agent, and then I could tell that he had done something incorrectly, or my body was not taking it correctly, or something, because my legs started twitching, like when he was cranking something or pumping something. I don't know what he was doing, but my leg was twitching and jerking. He was like, stop moving, please, you gotta stop moving. I'm like, I can't, you are tapping into my spine. My spine is doing this all on its own. And he just kept saying, stop moving. And like already at that point, I was like, what's happening? Okay. Luckily, my nurse was again very helpful. She stood in front of me and she held my hands, and I was holding on to this woman for dear life. Like I was looking at her, locked onto her, like, please do not move. And so it happened. It was over. It was not great, but I was like, okay, at least the hard part is over. After I got the epidural with, it's Squeaky Mouse time. After I got the epidural with Chazzy, everything moved on quickly. I slept a little bit, and then she was here, and I was like, okay, it's fine. Amara's gonna be here, and everything's gonna be great. Okay, so I was not dilating more, so they decided to put me on my side at some point, and so I was on my side, epiduraled up, could not really feel my legs. Legs were propped up, so my knees were open, and I dozed. When I woke up, I thought that like my catheter had slipped or something, because all I heard was this sloshing wet noise. And sorry for anybody who's squeamish, but this is about to get intense, so maybe you want to fast forward. I will leave a timestamp on the screen for when it is safe to come back if you want to hear the rest of the story, but to be honest, the rest of the story is rough. Okay, so I heard a splashing, and I thought, I wonder if my catheter slipped out. I must have just wet the bed. Whatever, I'm pregnant, I don't care. Like, one of my best friends is like, oh my goodness, I'm so scared of like pooping on the table. I'm like, girl, once you are pregnant and you've been pregnant for those 9-10 months, you are done. You do not care. I will poop all over the place. It's fine. You do not care. That's the point I'm trying to make. So I wasn't squeamish. I was just like, crap, well, we gotta deal with this. And so Matt was on his computer across the way from me, and I said, Matt, I need a nurse. And he stands up, and remember, I'm still really tired. He looks around, and he calls a nurse. He went so still. I remember the look on his face. He was like, cool. And I still didn't really understand what was happening. He went and he was like, we need a nurse. We need a nurse. Picked up the phone, called for a nurse. Then, like 30 seconds in, they weren't going fast enough. He was like, I'm gonna go get a nurse. I was like, hold on, just wait with me. They will come. The nurse came in, and I guess I dozed again, or honestly, once after the birth has happened, your mind kind of, how do I put this? Your mind kind of Jedi mind tricks you into thinking that everything was great. Like, even when I think about it, unless I'm talking about it actively, I think that I'm fine, but whatever. When the nurse came in, I remember it was like in slow motion. When she came in, she was smiling. She opened the door, or I couldn't see her open the door. She walked in, and then she slipped. She stumbled about like 3 feet away from my bed, looks down, and then the next thing I know, there are tons of nurses in the room, like tons of nurses. I didn't know it at the time. I learned it later. She had slipped in a puddle of my blood. I had so much blood. I don't know if I was, I'm probably doing this the wrong order. I think another nurse slipped when she came in, but it didn't matter. Somebody slipped in slow motion in my head. They called the doctor that was not my doctor, the doctor who was on, deck right now. And he was like, okay, well, blah, blah. He's giving out orders. I'm just like, what is happening? What is happening? I don't know what's happening. Like, I keep talking, but I feel like I'm screaming, but my voice is so soft. And I cannot get enough air. And then they put a mask on me. And the moment that mask hit my face, I was like, something real is happening right now. And at the time, I was so out of it. And I was so tired and so weak. It was like, whatever. My doctor came in within, I want to say 10 minutes. To me, it felt like 3 hours. And she was so calm. My doctor is, she's so amazing. She was like, so we're having some issues. You've had an abruption. And basically, I need to know if you would like a C-section right now. She gave me my options. Again, I'm gonna be honest, guys, I can't remember exactly what she said, but I just remember her being so still, so calm. And Matt's face was gone. Matt was gone. Matt was like, I'm gonna stay out of the way. But also, I've never seen him like that. He looked so panicked. I found out later that the C-section was non-optional. I needed the C-section, but my doctor knew me well enough, knows me as a person well enough to be like, let's give her this fake option, because let's be honest, guys, I am stubborn, and already back then I didn't have the best amount of faith in doctors. I just didn't. Since I was 15, I've been in and out of hospitals for my epilepsy, which they didn't know was epilepsy at the first. Which, I mean, yes, I understand you have to do tests. It could be anything, For a while, I was just like gone and, having, fainting spells, lots of syncope, and then I have a lot of medical distrust and a lot of medical trauma, which is not okay for somebody who is chronically ill. But this was different. This was, first of all, I lost tons of blood. So at the very least, it felt like in that moment, my life was in jeopardy and my daughter's life was in jeopardy. My baby's life was in jeopardy, She hadn't even been born yet. So, before I get weepy, I had an emergency C-section, and you guys will never guess who my anesthesiologist was. Guy who put in my I'm gonna start cursing. Guy who put in my I gotta breathe. Yeah, it was the same guy. It's fine. Yeah, I was gonna be dramatic, but I'm already being dramatic enough. He came in, they told me that I asked before I went into the C-section, is this guy gonna be in the room? Is he gonna be the thing? And they were like, we'll see what we can do, of course. Because, I mean, but it's an emergency. Everything is happening so fast. The head anesthesiologist came in and was like, we've got this. We're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. I have to go, but, like, don't. He came in and spent time and talked to me, and I know he was busy. But the guy who did my spinal tap was the guy who was going to be in for my C-section. Luckily, he was much, much more considerate after that. I think my doctor actually talked to him because I was like on a gurney going into my C-section, hyperventilating. And my doctor's like, it's okay, we're here, you know, nothing's gonna happen to you. And I'm just like babbling about this guy who I do not trust with chemicals in my body because I just didn't want him there. And she was like, look, we need to do this. Nothing he can do can hurt you because I'm here. And she went to bat for that. So she calmed me down, we got it done. Amara was born so small. She was so tiny. She was like a normal size for a baby, but Chaz was almost 9 pounds and she was barely 6. And then I found out that, you know, between the hypermesis and the abruption, which could have happened at any time, but it's COVID season, so I wasn't going to as many appointments as I did with Chazzy. I just slept. So maybe it could have been caught, but I wasn't going to appointments because I'm sickly and I can't just willy-nilly go to appointments. I thought I had it under control because I'd already had a baby. So that is my birth story. I'm sorry, it's been so long. It's a very long video. And I will try to wrap up the rest of this issue. I am left now with more of a, I don't want to call it a distrust. I don't know what it is. It's probably like borderlining an actual phobia. I need to get birth control, and between my anti-seizure medicines and just the seizures as they are, the going hypothesis is that, or the going observation is that my seizures are tied to my menses. And so we were trying to combat seizures with less ovulation. That's a whole other video. But the point is, my doctor, I trust her completely. I don't know what this is, but the thought of laying on that table so that she can insert an IUD or even something in my arm, guys, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I can't take a hormonal birth control for fear that it will affect my seizures more. And I guess that's how trauma works. You can't, I don't know what to do about it. My therapist says, you know, keep telling my birth story, even though it's like this, the way that I just told it was very calm compared to the first couple of times I told it. And yes, it feels like there's this heavy weight on my chest and I can't get enough breath. But I know that I'm breathing and it's fine. However, it is what it is. And hopefully by putting this out in the universe, I help somebody and it helps me too. And I'll talk to you guys more about my mental issues and my quest for birth control now. When I can. Alright, YouTube.